Get out of here now before I call security. The manager's shrill voice sliced through the quiet hum of the upscale convenience store on Fifth Avenue, causing a ripple of heads to turn. 10-year-old Leo Martinez stood frozen in front of the counter, his small hand clutching the grimy 20-cent coin he'd found after hours of searching. His bare feet were a stark contrast to the polished marble floors of the store where a single bottle of water cost more than his family's budget for dinner. "Please, ma'am," he pleaded, his voice trembling not with fear, but with a fierce, desperate resolve. "My sister is hungry. She's only 6 months old, and she won't stop crying. I just need a little bit of formula." The manager, a middle-aged woman named Ms. Albright, eyed the small, dust-streaked Latino boy with a look of pure disgust. 20 cents won't even buy you a piece of gum here, kid. This is a place for real customers, not for beggars." Just then, the door chimed, and Harrison Sterling, a real estate mogul and certified billionaire, strode in, his $3,000 suit practically radiating arrogance. He was just stopping in for a bottle of imported, sparkling water after closing a $50 million deal that afternoon. Leo's head snapped towards the immaculate man, his wide, dark eyes filled with a last-ditch hope. "Sir, please, can you help me? I swear on my life I will pay you back when I'm older. My mom always told me. She said there are always good people in the world. Can you be one of them today?" Harrison paused mid-stride, visibly irritated at being interrupted. He looked down at the grimy child who had the audacity to speak directly to him. "Do you have any idea who I am, kid?" he scoffed. "I build skyscrapers. I don't hand out charity to street rats." "I'm not a street rat, sir," Leo replied, his chin held high even as tears threatened to spill from his eyes. "My father died in Afghanistan serving this country. My mother works 3 jobs to keep a roof over our heads, but she collapsed from exhaustion today. I just ... I just want my sister to stop crying." Harrison let out a short, cynical laugh. "What? A sob story? Let me guess. Next you're going to ask for money for an emergency surgery?" He turned to the manager. "Call security. These people are always manufacturing some kind of drama." But then, something incredible happened. Leo didn't shrink away. He didn't run. Instead, he stared directly into Harrison's cold blue eyes and said something with a calmness that sent a jolt through everyone watching. "You're going to remember today for the rest of your life. And when you do, you'll realize you missed your chance to meet the one person who could have changed everything. For you." Harrison's brow furrowed. He was intrigued in spite of himself. There was something in that kid's eyes he couldn't quite place, a quiet fire that seemed far too old for a 10-year-old. As 2 massive security guards approached to haul Leo away, he clutched his 20-cent coin and made a promise that would echo for the next 15 years. "I swear I'll pay you back," he said, his voice ringing with conviction. "And you'll find out that underestimating someone because of how they look is the most expensive mistake you can possibly make." If this story of a childhood promise forged in humiliation has already captured your attention, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because you're going to want to see how 20 cents and an impossible vow grew into the most shocking power shift Wall Street has ever witnessed. The security guards were on him in seconds, 2 mountains of muscle in black uniforms that looked like they'd walked straight out of an action movie. "All right, kid, show's over. Let's go," the larger one grunted, his hand reaching for Leo's thin arm. "Wait," Harrison raised a hand, a cruel smirk spreading across his face. "Let him stay. I want to have a little fun with this." He sauntered over to Leo, his Italian leather shoes gleaming under the bright lights. "You said your father died serving his country? How noble. And your mother works 3 jobs? Let me guess, ... a cleaner, a waitress, and what else? Selling fruit on a street corner?" The other customers in the store were now forming a small, silent circle. Several of them had their phones out, discreetly recording. The manager, Ms. Albright, crossed her arms, a look of smug satisfaction on her face as she enjoyed the show. Leo stood his ground. My mother is a nursing assistant on the night shift. She stocks shelves at a grocery store during the day, and she cleans houses on the weekend. She barely gets 4 hours of sleep so we can eat. What an inspiration, Harrison chuckled, pulling a crisp $100 bill from his money clip. I'll tell you what, I'll make you a deal. You get down on your knees right here, in front of everyone, and you apologize for wasting my time. If you do that, maybe I'll consider giving this to your hardworking family. The silence in the store was heavy, thick with tension. Even one of the security guards shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable with the sheer cruelty of the situation. Leo's eyes darted from the $100 bill to the expectant faces surrounding him. He could hear his baby sister's hungry cries echoing in his mind. He could picture his mother, passed out on their worn-out couch after working 16 hours straight. For a moment that stretched into an eternity, Leo hesitated. Harrison's smirk widened. He thought he had him. He thought he had broken the spirit of this defiant little kid. You see, he said to the onlookers, everyone has a price. But then, Leo did something nobody expected. Instead of getting on his knees, he took a step back, his spine straight as a rod. In a voice that didn't shake, not even for a second, he said, my father didn't die for a flag so his son could kneel for small men. Harrison's face instantly darkened. What did you just call me? You heard me, Leo shot back, tucking his 20-cent coin safely back into his pocket. My father was Sergeant Marco Martinez, 10th Mountain Division. He taught me that you measure a man by his character, not by the number in his bank account. And from where I'm standing, you're the poorest man I've ever met. A murmur went through the crowd. A few people looked genuinely impressed by the boy's courage. Harrison felt his authority being publicly challenged, and that was something he never, ever tolerated, especially not from a 10-year-old kid from the projects. You have no idea who you're messing with, boy, Harrison leaned in, his voice a low, threatening growl. I could ruin your family's life with a single phone call. Where does your mother work? St. Mary's Hospital? One word from me to the board of directors, and she's out of a job tonight. A flash of fear shot through Leo, but he didn't let it show. He'd learned a long time ago that predators feed on fear. You could try, he said calmly, but then you'd have to explain to the world why you're so obsessed with a 10-year-old boy who just wanted to buy some milk for his baby sister. Harrison laughed, but it was a nervous, brittle sound. Nobody's going to believe a punk like you over me. Maybe not, Leo agreed, his eyes scanning the crowd, landing on the phone cameras still pointed in their direction. But we live in interesting times, don't we? Everyone has a camera, and the internet has a very, very long memory. For the first time all afternoon, Harrison Sterling looked genuinely worried. He glanced around at the phones, doing a quick calculation of the potential PR damage. A viral video of a billionaire tormenting a soldier's son? That could undo years of carefully crafted public image. Put those phones away, he snarled at the crowd. But it was too late. The entire ugly exchange had been captured from at least 5 different angles. Leo watched the shift in Harrison's demeanor with a cold, analytical fascination. It was amazing how quickly powerful men turned into cowards when their actions had consequences. You know, Mr. Sterling, Leo said, pronouncing the name with perfect clarity, making it clear he knew exactly who he was from the very beginning. I am going to pay you back when I grow up. But it's probably not going to be in the way that you think. As the tension in that store reached its breaking point, nobody could have possibly known they were witnessing the first clash between two people who, over the next 15 years, would become the central figures in one of the most incredible stories of justice and reversal Wall Street had ever seen. Every single cruel word spoken that day would become the fuel for a reckoning that would completely reshape the definition of power in America. What happened after that fiery confrontation in the convenience store was something no one, least of all Harrison Sterling, could have ever seen coming. As Leo Martinez walked out of the store, empty-handed but with his dignity intact, a woman with sharp, intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor caught up with him on the sidewalk. "Hey kid," she said, her voice calm but firm. It was Eleanor Vance, an investigative journalist for the New York Times who had been in the store buying a coffee. At 52 years old, with 3 decades of experience taking down corporate criminals, she recognized the raw systemic cruelty she had just witnessed. "What's your name?" "Leo Martinez," he answered, subtly wiping a tear from his eye. Even at 10, he knew that showing weakness on these streets was an invitation for trouble. Eleanor opened her purse and pulled out a $50 bill. "This is for milk and whatever else your sister needs. But I want a promise from you." She held his gaze. "Never forget that man's name. And never, ever let anyone convince you that you are worth less than he is." As Leo ran home, clutching the money that would feed his family for the week, Eleanor was already on the phone with her editor. "I need a full background check on Harrison Sterling," she said, a new fire in her voice. "Something tells me today wasn't the first time he stepped on someone just for the fun of it." Across town, Harrison had already dismissed the entire incident from his mind. For him, humiliating a poor kid was nothing more than a momentary diversion, a bit of casual sport before his next meeting with a team of Japanese investors. What he didn't know was that Eleanor Vance had built her Pulitzer-winning career on dismantling men exactly like him. Over the next few days, while Harrison was closing multi-million-dollar deals and dining at Michelin-star restaurants, Leo was coming home from school to look after his baby sister Sophia, while their mother, Maria, worked double shifts at the hospital. Their one-bedroom apartment in the Bronx was cramped and worn, but it was filled with something Harrison Sterling could never buy with all his billions: the unconditional love that held their small family together. "Mio," Maria said one night, rocking Sophia to sleep. "That reporter, Miss Vance, called again. She wants to know if you'd be interested in a mentorship program. She said she wants to help you." Leo looked up from his homework, surprised. "Help me with what?" Maria smiled, a deep sense of pride in her tired eyes. "She said she talked to your teachers. Apparently, your IQ scores are in the top 5% of the entire country. Your father always said you had a special mind, Leo." What Eleanor had uncovered about Harrison in her initial research was deeply disturbing. There were 3 sexual harassment lawsuits that had been quietly settled out of court. There were dozens of families who had been evicted from rent-controlled buildings he'd bought and flipped using legally questionable tactics. It was a clear, consistent pattern of abusing power that went back decades. But the detail that truly enraged Eleanor was the discovery that Harrison had used his political connections to block the construction of a new public school in the Bronx. Why? Because its proximity would have slightly decreased the value of his commercial properties in the area. Hundreds of kids just like Leo were stuck in overcrowded, underfunded schools because of the greed of a man who wouldn't have even noticed a few $1,000,000 missing from his fortune. "Mom," Leo asked one night, looking up from an advanced mathematics textbook Eleanor had sent him, "can I ask you a weird question?" "Of course, baby." "If someone does something really, really bad to a lot of people, but they have enough money to make sure they never get in trouble, does that mean they just win forever?" Maria stopped folding laundry and looked at her son. There was an intensity in his eyes that worried her, not because it felt dangerous, but because it felt far too heavy for a 10-year-old to carry. "Why do you ask that, Mio?" "Just wondering." Leo went back to his book, but Maria noticed he had started writing things in a specific notebook, one he kept hidden under his mattress. Meanwhile, Harrison Sterling continued to live his life of insulated privilege, completely oblivious to the fact that his casual cruelty had planted a seed that was now being carefully watered and cultivated. At his lavish dinner parties, he would occasionally tell the story of the arrogant little punk he'd put in his place, always getting a round of laughs from the other billionaires at the table. You should have seen the look on his face when I offered him $100 to kneel, Harrison would say, raising a glass of $3,000 champagne. These kids from the outer boroughs need to learn their place in the world, and they need to learn it early. What Harrison couldn't possibly imagine was that Eleanor Vance, through sources inside his own social circle, had documented not only his initial cruelty to Leo, but these follow-up conversations as well. Every arrogant boast, every dismissive comment, every display of contempt for human dignity, it was all being meticulously catalogued. Leo, in the meantime, had made a fascinating discovery at the public library. After research in Harrison Sterling, he began finding articles about other powerful men who had been exposed for corruption and abuse. He studied each case like a detective, analyzing how they were brought down, what evidence was used, and what their critical weaknesses were. Interesting, he'd mutter to himself, reading about a CEO who lost his entire company after a leak of compromising emails. Powerful men always make the same mistake. They think the rules don't apply to them. They think they're untouchable. In the notebook hidden under his mattress, Leo started what he called the Sterling Ledger. It wasn't a childish plan for revenge. It was something far more sophisticated, a strategic analysis of how a boy with nothing could one day dismantle an empire built on cruelty. Eleanor visited the Martinez family regularly, always bringing books, educational software, and opportunities for Leo. During one visit, she saw the notebook lying open on the kitchen table. "May I ask what you're writing in there?" Leo hesitated for a second, then decided to trust the one person who had shown him a path forward. "I'm studying powerful men who do bad things," he explained. "I want to understand how they get away with it." He paused, "And how, sometimes they don't." Eleanor smiled slowly. She had worked with grown men, prosecutors, and FBI agents who didn't show half the strategic determination she saw in that 10-year-old boy's eyes. "You know, Leo," she said, "there's a very important difference between revenge and justice. Revenge is emotional. It's hot, and it usually ends up burning the person who seeks it. But justice is patient. It's cold, strategic, and it benefits everyone. Which one do you think would be more effective against a man like Mr. Sterling?" Eleanor leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Hypothetically speaking, men like him have three core vulnerabilities: their ego, their money, and their reputation. If you can systematically dismantle one of those, the other two will collapse like a house of cards." That night, Leo made a new entry in his ledger that would change the course of his entire life. The best way to get even isn't to make someone pay for what they did in the past. It's to build a future where they become irrelevant. No one in that small Bronx apartment could have possibly known that this conversation had just set in motion one of the most ambitious plans for social justice Wall Street would ever encounter. A plan that would take exactly 15 years to execute, and that would transform a humiliated boy in a convenience store into the most feared and respected prosecutor in Manhattan. And Harrison Sterling? He just kept toasting his own success. At expensive dinners, completely oblivious to the fact that every self-satisfied laugh was just another nail in the coffin he didn't even know was being built for him. 15 years later, the air on the 50th floor of the magnificent Sterling Tower on Park Avenue was thick with anxiety. Harrison, now 60 years old with a mane of silver hair, stared nervously out the panoramic window. For weeks, whispers had been slithering through the corridors of Wall Street, rumors of a federal investigation into his real estate operations, rumors he had arrogantly dismissed. "Mr. Sterling," his assistant stammered from the doorway, her face pale. "The FBI is..." Here, they have warrants. Harrison felt the blood drain from his face. Warrants for what? Before she could answer, 3 federal agents in dark suits entered his opulent office. They were followed by a figure who made Harrison Sterling stumble for words. It was a young man about 25, dressed in an impeccably tailored navy suit. He carried a leather briefcase and wore a calm, confident smile that Harrison recognized with a sickening jolt of memory. "Mr. Sterling," the young man said, extending a hand that Harrison didn't take. "Leo Martinez, Assistant United States Attorney, Financial Crimes Division. I believe we've met before." Harrison stared into the same fierce, determined eyes he had looked down on 15 years ago in a convenience store. His mind struggled to connect the dots, to process the sheer impossibility of the moment. "You're that kid, double quotes, the one who promised to pay you back when he grew up," Leo finished. For him, his voice smooth as steel. "Well, Mr. Sterling, today is payday." The agents began systematically confiscating computers, hard drives, and boxes of documents. Leo opened his briefcase, revealing a stack of files organized with terrifying precision. "For the past 15 years, he began, his voice never rising, "I have studied every move your company has made. Every shell corporation, every offshore account in the Caymans, every bribe paid to city council members, every single family you illegally evicted from a building you wanted to flip." Leo pulled a tablet from his case. "But what truly astounds me, Mr. Sterling, is your arrogance. Do you have any idea how many times you've told that story about the convenience store at dinner parties and social events?" Harrison turned white as a sheet. 63 times in the last 15 years, to be exact. Always bragging about how you put some arrogant punk in his place. Leo tapped the screen, and Harrison's own booming voice filled the silent office. From a crystal-clear audio recording. These kids from the outer boroughs need to learn their place in the world, and they need to learn it early. The investigative journalist, Eleanor Vance, has been an invaluable resource in documenting your philosophical musings over the years, Leo said coolly. "Oh, and she's doing well, in case you were wondering. In fact, she's covering your arrest live for the New York Times from the lobby downstairs." Harrison staggered back into his lavish leather chair, the weight of it all finally hitting him like a tidal wave. "This is impossible. You were a beggar, a child." "A child, yes," Leo corrected him. "A beggar, no. I was asking for a chance to prove that a person's dignity isn't determined by their bank account, to prove that intelligence isn't tied to a zip code, and to prove that underestimating someone based on your own prejudice is the single most expensive mistake a man like you can make." One of the agents approached them. "Mr. Martinez, we found the encrypted ledgers you told us about. The accounts. The contracts, it's all here." Harrison shot up from his chair, a desperate attempt to regain control. "My lawyers will destroy you. I have connections in Washington, in Albany." "I have about your connections," Leo interjected, pulling another document from his briefcase. "Senator Morrison, who always fast-tracked your building permits. He was arrested yesterday for accepting bribes. Judge Hartwell, who miraculously dismissed every lawsuit against your companies. He's under federal investigation. And Mayor Davidson, who made your eviction so easy. He tendered his resignation this morning." The color completely vanished from Harrison's face. "How?" 15 years, Mr. Sterling, Leo said, the full weight of those words finally landing. 15 years of studying law at Harvard on a full academic scholarship, specializing in the exact type of corruption you perfected. 15 years of building a network of allies in the justice system, in journalism, and in government. While you were laughing at your dinner parties, telling your favorite story about humiliating a child, I was preparing for this exact moment." Harrison's phone began to buzz incessantly on his desk. In the span of minutes, his company's stock had plummeted 40%. Investors were pulling out, and banks were freezing his corporate accounts. "My family," Harrison whispered, the reality finally cracking his iron facade. "My reputation. My company." "Your family is about to learn that the mansion they live in was built with money stolen from working-class families," Leo stated. "Your reputation will be that of a predator hiding behind a mask of philanthropy. And your company will be remembered as a monument to corporate greed." Leo closed his file and looked Harrison directly in the eye. "But I want you to understand something. This isn't personal revenge. This is for all the families whose lives you shattered. For all the kids who went to underfunded schools because you bribed a politician. For every dream you crushed in the name of your own profit." Harrison finally broke, slumping into his chair, his shoulders shaking. "You were just a kid. How could you plan all of this?" "Because that kid learned the most important lesson of his life that day," Leo replied, turning to leave the office. "He learned that men like you only have power if you accept the role of the victim. And I decided, 15 years ago, that I would never be a victim again." As an agent snapped handcuffs onto Harrison Sterling's wrists, Leo made a phone call. "Mom, it's me. Turn on the news. I just kept the promise I made when I was 10. On the other end of the line, he could hear Maria's emotional voice. "Oh, Mio, your father would be so proud." 3 years after Harrison Sterling's conviction, New York City was a different place. The building that once bore the golden name, Sterling Tower, now had new letters gleaming in the sun. The Martinez Center for Social Justice. Leo, now 28, stood in his new office on the 50th floor, the very same office where Harrison had once reigned. But this space was no longer a monument to one man's greed. It was now the headquarters for the country's largest pro bono legal firm, defending low-income families. During a television interview marking the 3-year anniversary of the case, the host asked him, "How does it feel, knowing the man who tried to humiliate you is now serving a 25-year sentence?" Leo's response was calm and measured. "I don't feel satisfaction from his suffering. I feel satisfaction for the 400 families who got their homes back because of our investigation. I feel satisfaction for the 50,000 children who now attend new, properly funded schools because we recovered over $2 billion in stolen city funds." In a federal prison upstate, Harrison Blackstone, now 63, gaunt and gray, watched the interview on a small TV in the common room. His wife had divorced him. His children had changed their names. He was just another number in an orange jumpsuit. "That promise you made at 10 years old," the host asked, "has it been fulfilled?" Leo smiled softly. "It's been more than fulfilled. It's been multiplied. The 20 cents he refused to give a hungry child has been transformed into $2 billion. For the community. The little boy he tried to make kneel became the man who would stand up for thousands." During a commercial break, Leo took a call. It was his mother. "Leo, your sister Sophia got a perfect score on her LSATs. She wants to follow in your footsteps." Leo beamed, thinking of the crying baby he had fought for all those years ago. Now she was on her way to becoming a force for justice in her own right. At the end of the interview, the host asked Leo about his future. "I'm considering a run for the U.S. Senate," he revealed. "Because real change requires changing the structures of power. And unlike some people, I plan to use that power to serve the public, not myself." 3 months later, Leo Martinez officially announced his candidacy. His campaign was funded entirely by small-dollar donations from working families. Harrison Sterling, the man who used to buy senators, watched the news from his prison cell as the boy he once scorned rose to the highest levels of political power, carried there by the genuine gratitude of millions. The 20-cent promise had become something far greater than revenge. It had become a movement. Leo Martinez proved that the ultimate way to pay back someone who tries to destroy your dream is to build a reality so powerful, so just, and so transformative that they become nothing more than a footnote in your own. Incredible story. If this story of justice, resilience, and ultimate triumph moved you, please subscribe to the channel. We believe in the power of stories that show us that the greatest victory isn't in tearing someone down, but in building something so magnificent that they are left in the dust of your success.